In the shadowed halls of Haverford Manor, a widow is found strangled in a locked parlour, a torn crimson veil around her neck, a gift from a spurned lover. Hercule Poirot, with his brilliant mind, unravels a web of secrets. A resentful stepson, a fearful maid, a rejected suitor, and a hidden key that unlocks a deadly passage. As motives of pride, love, and betrayal collide, only Poirot can pierce the veil of deception to reveal a killer hiding in plain sight. Welcome to the Crimson Veil, where every thread leads to murder. Chapter 1. The Locked Parlour. The late autumn sun cast long, mournful shadows across the gravel drive of Haverford Manor, a Georgian pile that stood resolute against the chill of an English November. Hercule Poirot, clad in a meticulously tailored overcoat, stepped from the taxi with the precision of a man who valued order above all else. His patent leather shoes gleamed, and he adjusted his waxed moustache with a gloved finger, his sharp grey eyes scanning the manor's ivy-clad facade. The air carried a faint whiff of damp leaves and something heavier. Grief, perhaps, or fear. Inspector Japp awaited him at the manor's threshold, his face etched with the weariness of a man who had seen too many crimes, but never quite grown accustomed to them. "Poirot, you're a sight for sore eyes," he said, his voice gruff but tinged with relief. "This one's a proper puzzle. Mrs. Eleanor Grayson, widow, found dead in her parlour, strangled no less, and the room locked tight as a drum. No windows open, no sign of a break-in. Just this." He produced a small evidence bag, within which lay a scrap of the crimson silk, its edges frayed and torn, glinting like a bloodstain in the fading light. Poirot's eyes narrowed as he took the bag, holding it aloft to catch the sun's rays. "A veil, Inspector?" "Most curious. Silk, fine quality, and torn with some violence. This is no accident." He handed it back, his mind already turning over the implications. "Tell me, mon ami, the details of this locked parlour." Japp led him through the manor's oak-panelled hall, past portraits of stern-faced Graysons long departed, to a heavy door at the far end. The parlour beyond was a study in elegance. A crystal chandelier hung above a polished mahogany table. A fireplace glowed faintly with dying embers, and a chaise longue bore the faint imprint of its last occupant. The air was thick with the scent of lavender and wax, undercut by a metallic hint that Poirot's keen senses did not miss. "The door was bolted from the inside," Japp explained, pointing to a sturdy iron bolt now slid back. "The maid, Clara Finch, found her this morning at 9, screamed the house down. Mrs. Grayson was lying there." He gestured to the chaise. "Veil round her neck, face blue. Coroner says she died around 10 last night." Poirot knelt beside the chaise, his gloved fingers tracing the velvet upholstery. A few crimson threads clung to the armrest, their time home, sheen matching the torn veil. "The struggle. It was brief," he murmured. "No blood, no overturned furniture. The killer was swift, precise." He stood, his gaze sweeping the room. A single window, its latch secure, offered no entry. The fireplace was too narrow for a man to pass. "And the key, Inspector?" Japp shook his head. "None found. Just the bolt. Clara had to fetch the butler to break the door down." Poirot's moustache twitched, a sign of his mind at work. A locked room, a dead woman, and a veil torn as if in anger. "This is not merely a crime, Japp. It is a performance." Japp gestured toward the drawing-room, where 3 figures sat in uneasy silence. "The suspects, Poirot. Simon Grayson, her stepson, sour as a lemon, that one. Clara Finch, the maid, jumpy as a cat. and Reginald Ashford, a barrister who was courting her. All swear they were elsewhere last night. Poirot's eyes lingered on the trio. Simon, a lean young man with hollow cheeks, stared at the floor, his fingers drumming a restless rhythm. Clara, pale and slight, twisted her apron into knots, her eyes darting to the door. Reginald, impeccably dressed, sat rigid, his jaw set, but his hands betraying a faint tremor. "Each has a story," Poirot said softly. "And each, perhaps, a secret." He turned back to the parlour, his gaze settling on the crimson threads. "This veil, it is the key, not to the door, but to the heart of the matter. Why tear it? Why leave it? The little grey cells, they begin to stir." Japp sighed. "You and your grey cells. Any early theories, Poirot?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Theories, mon ami, are like wine. They must breathe. For now, I observe, the locked parlour, it speaks of calculation, the torn veil, of passion. We shall see which voice is louder." As the evening deepened, Poirot stepped to the window, the manor's grounds fading into dusk. Somewhere in this house, he knew, lay the truth, a truth as delicate and dangerous as the silk in his hand. Chapter 2. The Widow's Shadow. The drawing-room of Haverford Manor, with its high ceilings and heavy velvet drapes, seemed to hold its breath as Hercule Poirot entered, his polished shoes clicking softly on the parquet floor. The air was laden with the faint scent of beeswax and the sharper tang of unease, as though the very walls knew more than they would tell. Inspector Japp, trailing behind, muttered something about the chill of the November evening, but Poirot's attention was fixed on the room's occupants, each a study in guarded silence. The widow's death had cast a pall over the manor, and Poirot, with his unerring instinct for the human heart, sensed that the truth lay not only in the locked parlour, but in the shadows of those who had known Eleanor Grayson best. He paused before a portrait above the mantelpiece, its subject a woman of striking beauty, her dark eyes commanding even from the canvas. Her auburn hair was swept up beneath a crimson veil, the same hue as the torn scrap found in the parlour. "Madame Grayson, I presume," Poirot said, his voice low but carrying the weight of inquiry. Japp nodded. "Painted 3 years ago, they say. She was a looker, no doubt, but sharp as a tack. Ruled this house like a queen." Poirot's grey eyes gleamed. "A queen, oui, but one who made enemies as well as admirers, non?" He turned to face the 3 figures seated in a semicircle, their postures betraying the strain of the morning's discovery. Simon Grayson, the stepson, slouched in a high-backed chair, his lean frame coiled with a restless energy, his dark eyes fixed on a point beyond the room. Clara Finch, the maid, sat on the edge of a settee, her hands twisting a damp handkerchief, her pale face a mask of barely contained distress. Reginald Ashford, the suitor, stood by the window, his tailored suit immaculate, but his hands clasped tightly behind his back, as though to still their trembling. "Let us begin," Poirot said, settling into a chair with the air of a conductor about to lead an orchestra. "Madame Grayson, she was a woman of a consequence. I wish to understand her, her life, her heart, her enemies. Who better to tell me than those who shared her world?" Simon shifted, his lips curling into a faint sneer. "What's there to tell? She was my father's widow, not my mother. Kept the purse strings tight and the house tighter. Everyone tiptoed around her." Poirot tilted his head, his moustache twitching slightly. "And you, Monsieur Grayson, you did not tiptoe?" Simon's eyes flashed. "I'm no lapdog. She made sure I knew my place. second to her precious trusts and charities. Father left me nothing but debts, and she dangled the promise of an allowance like a carrot before a mule. Poirot noted the bitterness in the young man's voice, the way his fingers drummed a staccato rhythm on the armrest. You are a man of ambition, oui? Yet ambition, it requires funds. Did you ask Madame Grayson for assistance? Simon's jaw tightened. I asked once. She laughed. Said I'd squander it on cards and horses, as if she knew me. Poirot's gaze softened, but his mind was sharp. And did she know you, monsieur? Or did she see only the stepson who resented her? Simon looked away, his silence an answer in itself. Poirot turned to Clara, whose hands stilled at his attention. Mademoiselle Finch, you served Madame Grayson. You saw her in moments others did not. Tell me, what was she to you? Clara's voice was barely above a whisper, her eyes darting to the floor. She was kind, sir. Took me in when I had nowhere else. I was an orphan, you see, and she gave me work, a home. She could be strict, but fair. Always fair. Poirot leaned forward, his voice gentle but probing. And yet, mademoiselle, you are afraid. Your hands, they tremble. Is it only the shock of her death, or something more? Clara's cheeks flushed, and she tucked her hands beneath her apron. It's just the shock, sir, finding her like that. Her face all wrong. The veil. Her voice broke, and she pressed the handkerchief to her lips. Poirot's eyes lingered on her, noting the faint bruise peeking from beneath her sleeve, a shadow of purple against her pale skin. You found her, oui? At what hour? 9 this morning, sir, Clara said, her voice steadier now. I knocked, but there was no answer. The door was locked, so I fetched Mr. Hargreaves, the butler. He broke it open, and there she was. She shuddered, her eyes welling. Poirot nodded, filing away her words. And last night, mademoiselle? Where were you? In the pantry, sir, polishing silver. Mrs. Grayson sent me there after tea. She said she wanted to be alone. Alone, Poirot repeated, his tone thoughtful. And yet, someone joined her. Someone with access to her parlour. His gaze shifted to Reginald Ashford, who had remained silent, his posture rigid by the window. Monsieur Ashford, you were, I understand, a suitor to Madame Grayson. A man of law, of standing. Tell me of your acquaintance with her. Reginald turned, his face composed, but his eyes wary. I met Eleanor 6 months ago at a charity ball. She was remarkable, witty, poised, a woman of rare strength. I admired her greatly. Poirot's smile was faint but knowing. Admiration, it often leads to affection, no? You dined with her last night, I'm told. Reginald nodded, his hands unclenching slightly. Yes, at 8. We spoke of her work, her plans for the estate. I left at 9, as I told Inspector Japp. Poirot's eyes narrowed. And during this dinner, monsieur, did you speak of matters of the heart? Reginald's composure faltered, a flicker of unease crossing his face. I may have expressed my regard for her. She was gracious, but clear that her affections lay elsewhere. Poirot's moustache twitched. Elsewhere, a curious phrase. And you, a man of pride, accepted this rejection with grace? I had no choice, Reginald said, his voice tight. I wished her well, and left. Poirot rose, pacing slowly before the fireplace, his hands clasped behind his back. A woman of wealth and will, loved by some, resented by others. A locked parlour, a torn veil, and 3 souls each with their own story. The little grey cells, they begin to arrange the pieces. Japp, who had been scribbling notes, looked up. You're awfully calm, Poirot. We've got no murder weapon, no key, and no clear motive. Just that blasted veil." Poirot's eyes sparkled. "The veil, mon ami, is more than a clue. It is a symbol. Of what I am not yet certain, but it was chosen with care. Tell me, what do we know of Madame Grayson's life before her death?" Japp flipped through his notebook. "Widowed 5 years ago when Sir Henry Grayson passed. Heart attack. Sudden. Left her the manor and a fortune. Most of it tied up in trusts for no charities. She ran the estate like a business, hosted salons, funded orphanages. Had a sharp tongue, though. Made enemies in the village. Some called her cold, others generous. Depends who you ask." Poirot nodded, his mind cataloguing the details. "And her relations with these 3? Japp glanced at the suspects. "Simon's her stepson from Sir Henry's first marriage. Never got along with her, by all accounts. Clara's been with her 2 years, loyal as a dog. Ashford's been circling her for months, but no one thought she'd marry again." Poirot turned to the portrait, studying the crimson veil draped over Eleanor's shoulders. "This veil, it was hers, oui? A favourite?" Clara nodded, her voice soft. "She wore it often, sir. Said it reminded her of happier days. Mr. Ashford gave it to her, a gift from his travels." Poirot's gaze sharpened, but he said nothing, merely filing the detail away. He crossed to a small writing desk in the corner, its surface cluttered with letters and ledgers. A faint scent of jasmine lingered, the same perfume he had detected on the torn veil. "Madame Grayson, she was a woman of taste," he murmured, lifting a letter sealed with red wax. The seal was unbroken, addressed to a solicitor in London. "And secrets, perhaps?" Japp frowned. "You think she was hiding something?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Everyone hides something, mon ami. The question is whether it was worth killing for." He turned to the suspects, his voice calm but commanding. "I will speak with each of you again, but for now I ask only that you remain in the manor. The truth, it is like a bird in a cage. It cannot fly far." Simon muttered something under his breath, but Clara nodded meekly, and Reginald inclined his head with a stiff courtesy. Poirot's eyes lingered on them, noting the subtle shifts in their expressions, the flicker of defiance, the quiver of fear, the mask of control. Each, he knew, held a piece of the puzzle, but the picture was far from clear. As he and Japp stepped into the hall, Poirot paused by a tall window overlooking the manor's grounds. The lawn stretched into the gathering dusk, a faint mist curling around the yew hedges. "This house," he said softly. "It is a stage, and Madame Grayson was its star, but someone wished to end her performance." Japp sighed, rubbing his temples. "You're talking in riddles again, Poirot. Any guesses who?" Poirot's eyes gleamed with that peculiar light that came when his mind was fully engaged. "Guesses non, but observations oui. The stepson, he is angry, but anger alone does not make a murderer. The maid, she is loyal, yet her fear suggests more than grief. The suitor, he is polished, but polish can hide a wound. And the veil, always the veil. It was not merely torn, it was left for us to find." He turned to Japp, his voice low. "We must look beyond the locked door, mon ami. The parlour, it is a distraction. The truth lies in the hearts of those who remain." Japp shook his head, a wry smile tugging at his lips. "You make it sound so simple, Poirot, but I'll wager it's anything but." Poirot's moustache curved upward. "Simplicity, Inspector, is the destination. The journey, however, is a labyrinth." As they moved toward the parlour to re-examine the scene, Poirot's mind raced, piecing together the fragments. The bolted door, the crimson threads, the jasmine perfume, the bruise on Clara's wrist, the tension in Reginald's hands, the venom in Simon's words. Eleanor Grayson had been a woman of power, but power, Poirot knew, invited envy, resentment, and betrayal. Somewhere in this manner, the widow's shadow lingered, and with it, the key to her murder. Chapter 3. The Stepson's Grievance. The library of Haverford Manor was a cavern of shadows, its towering shelves heavy with leather-bound tomes and the musty scent of old paper. A single lamp cast a golden glow over a cluttered desk, where Hercule Poirot stood, his gloved fingers tracing the edge of a blotter stained with ink. The room, with its dark panelling and high windows, felt like a sanctuary for secrets, and Poirot, ever attuned to the undercurrents of human nature, sensed that here he might uncover the first threads of truth in the tapestry of Eleanor Grayson's murder. Inspector Japp hovered near the door, his impatience evident in the tap of his foot. "Simon Grayson's been in here all morning, Poirot. Says he spent last night here too, reading or some such. Sounds like a flimsy alibi to me." Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint smile playing beneath it. "Flimsy, mon ami? Perhaps. But the truth, it is often hidden in the ordinary. Let us speak with Monsieur Grayson, and see what his books and his heart reveal." Simon entered, his lean frame slouched, his dark eyes wary beneath a shock of untidy hair. He wore a tweed jacket, frayed at the cuffs, and his fingers bore the faint smudges of ink, as though he had been writing furiously before being summoned. He dropped into a chair with an air of defiance, crossing his arms. "What do you want, Monsieur Poirot? I've told the inspector everything. I was here last night, reading. Didn't hear a thing." Poirot settled into a chair opposite, his posture impeccable, his grey eyes fixed on Simon with an intensity that seemed to peel back layers. "Reading, Monsieur Grayson, a noble pursuit. And what, may I ask, was the subject of your study?" Simon shrugged, his gaze sliding to the desk. "Some history, Roman campaigns, nothing you'd care about." Poirot's smile was gentle, but unyielding. "On the contrary, I care about all things that occupy the mind of a man whose stepmother has been murdered. History, it teaches us strategy, ambition, betrayal. Qualities, perhaps, not unknown to you." Simon's jaw tightened, a flush creeping up his neck. "What are you getting at?" "I didn't kill her. She was a thorn in my side, sure, but I'm not a fool. Killing her wouldn't get me the estate. It's all locked up in trusts." Poirot leaned forward, his voice soft but probing. "And yet, resentment, it is a powerful motive, no? Madame Grayson, she controlled your future. A young man of your age, 25, oui, he dreams of independence, of making his mark. But she held the purse strings, and with them, your dreams." Simon's eyes flashed, but he held Poirot's gaze. "She was a tyrant. Father worshipped her, left her everything. I got scraps, a pittance to live on, and only if I played her game. She wanted me to beg, to grovel. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction." Poirot's fingers steepled, his mind cataloguing the young man's words. "And so, you stayed here, in this library, nursing your grievances among the Romans. Tell me, monsieur, what time did you retire?" Simon hesitated, his fingers drumming on the armrest. "Around 11, I think. I lost track of time." Poirot's gaze drifted to the desk, where a leather-bound journal lay half-hidden beneath a pile of papers. "You write, oui? A journal, perhaps? The thoughts of a man are often more honest on paper than in speech." Simon's hand twitched, as though tempted to snatch the journal away. "It's private. Just notes, ideas. Nothing to do with this." Poirot rose, his movements deliberate, and approached the desk. He lifted a pen, its nib crusted with dried ink, and noted a faint scratch on the blotter, as though someone had written with force. "Ideas, monsieur, can be dangerous. May I see this journal?" Simon stood, his voice sharp. "It's nothing. Just ramblings. You've no right." Japp stepped forward, his tone gruff. "Easy, lad. We're investigating a murder. If you've nothing to hide, let's see it." Simon's shoulders slumped, and he handed over the journal with a scowl. "Fine, but it's nothing but my thoughts." Poirot opened the book, his eyes scanning the hurried scrawl. The entries were erratic, filled with complaints about Eleanor's control, her refusal to fund Simon's ventures, a plan for a publishing house, a scheme to invest in a friend's motorcar business. One line, dated 2 days prior, caught Poirot's attention. "She mocks me, but she'll see. I'll have what's mine." He closed the journal, his expression unreadable. "These words, Monsieur Grayson, they suggest a man at war with his circumstances. Did you argue with Madame Grayson last night?" Simon shook his head, his voice low. Number Y avoided her. She was in the parlour, entertaining Ashford. "I stayed here." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And you heard nothing? No cries, no footsteps?" "The parlour. It is not so far from this room." "Nothing," Simon insisted, but his fingers clenched, betraying a flicker of unease. Poirot set the journal down, his gaze returning to the desk. A small ink bottle, nearly empty, stood beside a crumpled sheet of paper. He lifted it, smoothing it out to reveal a half-written letter, addressed to no one, its contents a jumble of angry phrases. "Unfair. Trapped. She'll regret it." He folded it carefully, tucking it into his pocket. "You write with passion, monsieur. But passion, it can lead to rash actions." Simon's face paled. "I didn't mean anything by it. I was angry, that's all." Poirot nodded, his smile enigmatic. "Anger. It is a fire. It warms, but it also burns. Merci, Monsieur Grayson. We will speak again." As Simon left, his footsteps heavy, Japp turned to Poirot. "He's hiding something, isn't he? That journal, those letters. It's all a bit too convenient." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Convenient, oui, but also revealing. Monsieur Grayson is a man of frustration, but is he a man of violence? That we must determine. The ink stains, the scratched blotter, they suggest a mind in turmoil, writing late into the night. But was he writing, or was he elsewhere?" Japp frowned. "You think he's lying about being here?" Poirot paced slowly, his hands clasped behind his back. "I think, mon ami, that the library is a refuge, but also a stage. He claims to have been here, yet the parlour is close enough for a determined ear to hear a struggle. We must test his story." He crossed to the window, its heavy curtains drawn back to reveal the darkened grounds. A narrow path led from the library's French doors to the garden, and Poirot noted the faint scuff of mud on the threshold. "This door, it opens to the outside. Oui, a man could leave, return, and no one would know." Japp followed his gaze. "You think he slipped out? But the parlour door was bolted from the inside." Poirot's moustache twitched. "The bolt, it is a puzzle, but not insoluble. A key, a trick, a hidden means. There are ways to lock a door and leave no trace. We must look closer." He returned to the desk, his fingers brushing the blotter once more. A faint indentation caught his eye, the ghost of words pressed into the paper. He lifted a sheet of blank stationery and held it to the light, revealing the faint outline of a phrase. Must act soon. The little grey cells, they whisper, Poirot murmured. Monsieur Grayson, he writes of action. But what action did he take? Japp scratched his head. You're building a case, Poirot, but it's all smoke so far. No proof he left this room. Poirot's smile was serene. Proof, mon ami, is like a pearl. It forms slowly, layer by layer. We have the journal, the letter, the mud. We have a man whose resentment is a living thing. But we must also consider the others. The maid, the suitor. Each plays a part in this drama. As they left the library, Poirot's mind churned, piecing together the fragments. Simon's anger, the ink-stained fingers, the scrawled threats, the unlocked French doors. The stepson was a man of motive, but motive alone did not make a murderer. The crimson veil, the locked parlour, the jasmine perfume, they all pointed to a deeper truth, one Poirot was determined to uncover. He glanced back at the library, its lamp flickering like a beacon in the gloom. The grievance of the stepson, he said softly. It is but one act in this play. The next, it waits for us. Chapter 4. The maid's tremor. The servants' quarters of Haverford Manor were a stark contrast to the opulent rooms above, their narrow corridors and plain walls lit only by the feeble glow of a single oil lamp. Hercule Poirot, his impeccable suit slightly out of place in the utilitarian space, moved with the same deliberate grace as he did in the grand drawing-room. Inspector Japp followed, his heavy tread echoing on the worn floorboards, his notebook clutched like a talisman against the mystery that deepened with each passing hour. The air here was damp, tinged with the faint smell of lye and starch, and Poirot's sharp senses detected another undercurrent, fear, raw and unspoken. They paused before a small door, its paint chipped but clean, and Japp knocked briskly. "Clara Finch," he called. "A word, if you please." The door opened to reveal Clara, her slight frame dwarfed by the starched apron she wore like armor. Her pale face was drawn, her blue eyes wide and shadowed, as though sleep had eluded her since the discovery of Eleanor Grayson's body. She curtsied awkwardly, her hands twisting the edge of her apron into a tight knot. "Yes, sir. Monsieur Poirot. Please, come in." The room was sparse, a narrow bed, a chipped washstand, a single chair, but meticulously tidy, a testament to Clara's devotion to order. Poirot noted a small photograph on the bedside table, its frame inexpensive but polished, showing a younger Clara beside an older woman with Eleanor's commanding features. He gestured to it, his voice gentle. "Madame Grayson, oui? You were close to her, Mademoiselle Finch." Clara's lips trembled, and she nodded, her eyes darting to the photograph. "She was like a mother to me, sir. Took me in when I was 16. No family, no prospects. Gave me work, taught me to read proper. I'd have been in the workhouse without her." Poirot settled into the chair, his posture erect, but his expression kind, inviting confidence. "A great kindness indeed. And yet, mademoiselle, I see in your eyes a fear that goes beyond grief. You found her this morning, strangled, in a locked parlour. It is a terrible thing. Tell me, what did you see when you entered?" Clara's hands stilled, her knuckles white. "It was awful, sir. I knocked at 9, like always, to bring her morning tea. No answer. I called out, but nothing. The door was locked, so I fetched Mr. Hargreaves. He broke the bolt, and there she was, on the chaise, her face." She broke off, pressing a hand to her mouth. "Blue, twisted. That veil round her neck, all torn. I screamed, sir. Couldn't help it. Poirot's grey eyes softened, but his mind was razor-sharp, cataloguing every quiver in her voice. The veil, mademoiselle. You said it was a gift from Monsieur Ashford. Did Madame Grayson wear it often? Clara nodded, her voice barely audible. Yes, sir. She loved it. Said it made her feel young again. She'd wear it in the evenings, especially when Mr. Ashford came calling. Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint sign of his thoughts aligning. And last night, you saw her after tea, oui? She sent you to the pantry. Did she seem herself? Clara hesitated, her eyes flickering to the floor. She was quiet, sir. Not cross, but distracted. Said she needed time alone. I thought maybe she and Mr. Ashford had words, but I didn't ask. Poirot leaned forward, his voice low and steady. And you, mademoiselle, where were you after tea? The pantry. It is far from the parlour, no? In the servants' hall, sir, polishing silver. I was there till near 10. Then I went to bed. Her words were quick, almost rehearsed, and Poirot's gaze sharpened. He rose, pacing slowly, his gloved fingers brushing the edge of the washstand. His eyes fell on Clara's wrist, where the sleeve of her blouse had ridden up, revealing a faint bruise, its edges mottled purple and green. This mark, mademoiselle, he said, his tone gentle but insistent. It is recent, oui? How did you come by it? Clara tugged her sleeve down, her cheeks flushing. It's nothing, sir. I bumped it, carrying a tray. Clumsy, that's all. Poirot's smile was kind, but his eyes missed nothing. Clumsy, perhaps, but the shape, it suggests a grip, not a bump. A hand, strong and determined. Tell me, mademoiselle, who held you so? Clara's breath caught, and she shook her head, her eyes filling with tears. No one, sir. I swear it. I just fell. Poirot paused, his gaze holding hers, searching for the truth behind her fear. The heart, it speaks when the lips are silent, he said softly. You loved Madame Grayson, yet you are afraid. Of what? Or of whom? Clara's hands twisted the apron again, her voice a whisper. I don't know anything, sir. I just want her back. Poirot nodded, but his mind was racing, piecing together the fragments. Clara's devotion, her fear, the bruise that told a story she would not. He turned to the photograph, lifting it gently. This picture, it is cherished. You keep it close, oui? A reminder of her kindness. Clara's tears spilled over. She gave me that when I turned 18. Said I was family, not just a maid. I'd never had anyone say that before. Poirot set the photograph down, his expression thoughtful. Family. It binds us, but it also burdens us. Did Madame Grayson ever speak of her troubles? Of Monsieur Simon, perhaps, or Monsieur Ashford? Clara hesitated, then shook her head. She didn't confide in me, sir. Not like that. But she was careful with Mr. Simon. Said he was reckless, always wanting money. And Mr. Ashford? She liked him, but she'd laugh sometimes, say he was too eager, like a puppy. Poirot's eyes gleamed. A puppy, oui? And puppies, they can bite when they feel spurned. Tell me, mademoiselle, did you see Monsieur Ashford leave last night? Clara's fingers stilled. I saw him in the hall, about 9. He looked upset, sir, but I didn't stop to ask. I was busy. Poirot nodded, filing away the detail. And Monsieur Simon? Did you see him in the library, as he claims? Clara's eyes flickered, a momentary pause that Poirot noted. I didn't see him, sir. The library's on the other side of the house, but he's often there, late. Japp, who had been silent, scribbled in his notebook. You're sure about your own movements, Clara? No one to vouch for you in the pantry?" Clara's flush deepened. "Mr. Hargreaves was in and out, sir. He'd tell you I was there." Poirot's gaze lingered on her, his mind turning over the bruise, the hesitation, the loyalty that seemed to war with something unspoken. "Merci, Mademoiselle Finch. You have been most helpful. But I ask you to consider. The truth, it protects those who are innocent, but it also frees those who are afraid." Clara's eyes met his, wide and searching, but she said nothing, only nodded as tears traced her cheeks. Poirot and Japp stepped into the corridor, the door closing softly behind them. Japp let out a frustrated sigh. "She's hiding something, Poirot. That bruise, it's no accident. Someone's got her scared." Poirot's moustache curved slightly. "Oui, mon ami. The bruise, it is a clue, but not to the murder, yet. It speaks of force, of coercion. Clara Finch is loyal, but loyalty can be a chain. We must learn who holds the key to her fear." Japp frowned, flipping through his notes. "You think she knows who did it?" Poirot's eyes gleamed in the dim light. "I think, Inspector, that she knows more than she says. The maid, she is the eyes of the house, seeing what others miss. But fear, it blinds even the sharpest gaze. We must look to her duties, her movements. The pantry, it is far from the parlour, yet not so far that a cry could not be heard." He paused, his mind returning to the bruise, its shape suggesting a man's grip, strong, perhaps desperate. The little grey cells, they suggest a possibility. Clara, she is loyal to Madame Grayson, but someone has made her afraid. Was it the killer, ensuring her silence? Or another, with their own secrets? Japp shook his head, a wry smile tugging at his lips. "You're weaving a web, Poirot. But we've still got no hard evidence, just a bruise and a scared girl." Poirot's smile was serene. "Evidence, mon ami, is like a mosaic. Each piece seems small, but together they form the truth. The bruise, the veil, the locked door, they are pieces. We must find how they fit." As they ascended the narrow stairs back to the main house, Poirot's thoughts lingered on Clara, her trembling hands, her loyalty, her fear. The maid's tremor was more than grief. It was a signal, faint but clear, that the truth lay close, hidden in the shadows of Haverford Manor. The crimson veil, he knew, was the thread that would lead him to it, and he would follow it, step by meticulous step, until the killer's mask was torn away. Chapter 5. The Suitor's Pride, the conservatory of Haverford Manor, with its glass walls and climbing roses, offered a deceptive air of tranquility, as though the tragedy within the manor's walls could not penetrate its verdant embrace. Hercule Poirot stood by a wrought-iron table, his gloved fingers brushing the petals of a late-blooming rose, its scent mingling with the faint dampness of the November air. The conservatory's panes reflected the flickering light of a single lantern, casting long shadows that danced across the tiled floor. Inspector Japp, ever practical, paced nearby, his brow furrowed as he clutched his notebook, its pages now creased from a constant consultation. "Reginald Ashford," Japp said, his voice low but edged with suspicion. "He's the odd one out, Poirot. Not family, not staff. Just a man who thought he could win Eleanor Grayson's hand. And he was here last night, dining with her, right before she was killed. That's no coincidence." Poirot's grey eyes gleamed, his moustache twitching as he turned from the rose. "Coincidence, mon ami, is a lazy explanation. Monsieur Ashford, he is a man of ambition, of pride. But pride, when wounded, can turn to something darker. Let us see what he reveals." Reginald entered, his tailored suit as pristine as ever, though the conservatory's humid air seemed to weigh on him, a faint sheen of perspiration on his brow. He stood tall, his jaw set, but his hands, clasped behind his back, betrayed a slight tremor. Poirot noted the polished shoes, their soles bearing faint traces of mud, as though hastily cleaned. "Monsieur Ashford," Poirot began, his voice smooth but commanding, "you were the last to see Madame Grayson alive. Why? A dinner, intimate, at 8 o'clock. Tell me of this evening." Reginald's smile was tight, practiced. "It was a pleasant dinner, Monsieur Poirot. Eleanor was in fine spirits, witty, charming, as always. We discussed her charitable work, the estate's future. I left at 9, as I told the inspector." Poirot tilted his head, his eyes fixed on Reginald's. "And yet, monsieur, you omit the heart of the matter. You proposed to Madame Grayson, did you not? A man of your standing, a barrister, does not dine alone with a woman like her without purpose." Reginald's composure faltered, a flicker of unease crossing his face. Yes, I proposed. I admired her greatly, her strength, her grace. I thought we could build a life together." Poirot's smile was faint, but piercing. "Admiration, oui. But love? That is a fire that burns deep. And when she refused you, monsieur, how did this fire burn? With acceptance or with anger?" Reginald's hands unclenched, then clenched again. "I was disappointed, naturally, but I respected her wishes. She was clear. Her heart was not free. I left her in the parlour, alive and well." Poirot paced slowly, his shoes clicking softly on the tiles. "You left, you say? And yet, your shoes, they tell a different story. Mud, monsieur, faint but present. You walked the grounds, perhaps. After this rejection, a man might need to clear his thoughts." Reginald's eyes narrowed, but he nodded. "A brief walk, yes. The night was cool, and I needed air. I returned to my lodgings in the village afterward." Poirot's gaze lingered on him, noting the slight tightening of his lips, the way his fingers flexed, as though resisting an urge to fidget. "And this walk, it took you where? The garden path. It leads past the parlour window, non? A man, wounded by rejection, might pause, might look inside." Reginald's voice hardened. "I did no such thing. I walked the front drive, then left. I had no reason to linger." Poirot stopped pacing, his hands clasped behind his back. "No reason, monsieur. A woman of beauty and wealth refuses you. A man of pride, such as yourself, a barrister accustomed to winning, does not accept defeat so easily. The veil, the crimson veil you gave her, it was found torn around her neck. A gift of love, turned to a weapon. This, it troubles me." Reginald's face paled, but he held Poirot's gaze. "I gave her that veil months ago, from a trip to Florence. She cherished it. I don't know how it was torn, or why it was used. Like that." Poirot's eyes gleamed, his mind cataloguing every nuance of Reginald's words. "Cherished, you say? And yet it was torn with force, with passion. A symbol, perhaps, of a love rejected. Tell me, monsieur, did you ever visit Madame Grayson in her parlour by another means? A private entrance, perhaps?" Reginald's jaw tightened, a flash of something, anger, fear, in his eyes. "Number I entered through the front door, always. She was particular about propriety." Poirot nodded, but his thoughts were elsewhere, turning over the mud on the shoes, the veil's significance, the timing of Reginald's departure. He crossed to a small table where a tray of tea things sat, untouched since the morning. A faint trace of jasmine lingered, the same perfume he had detected on the veil. "This scent, monsieur, It is familiar to you. Madame Grayson, she wore it often? Reginald hesitated, then nodded. Yes, jasmine. It suited her. Poirot's moustache twitched. And the veil, it carried this scent. A detail, small but vital. The killer, they chose the veil deliberately, non? To mark their act with meaning. Japp, who had been silent, stepped forward, his voice gruff. Come now, Ashford. You were in that parlour, you proposed. She turned you down. A man doesn't just walk away from that without a fight. You argue. Did things get out of hand? Reginald's eyes flashed. I told you, I left her alive. I'm no murderer. I loved her. Poirot's voice was soft but unyielding. Love, monsieur. It is a motive as powerful as hate. You gave her the veil, a token of your devotion. To see it used so, it must wound you deeply. Unless, of course, you knew how it came to be torn. Reginald's hands shook, and he shoved them into his pockets. I've nothing more to say. I didn't kill her. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. For now, monsieur, that is enough. But the truth, it has a way of rising, like the tide. We will speak again. As Reginald left, his footsteps echoing in the conservatory's stillness, Japp turned to Poirot, his frustration evident. He's slippery, Poirot. All polish and no cracks. But that mud on his shoes. You're on to something there. Poirot's eyes sparkled. The mud, oui, it is a whisper of truth. He walked the grounds, but where? The parlour window. It is low, easily reached. A man, rejected, might linger, might see something, or do something. And the veil, mon ami, it ties him to the crime, not just by ownership, but by sentiment. Japp flipped through his notebook. You think he went back? Used some trick to get into the parlour? Poirot's gaze drifted to the roses, their petals curling in the lantern's light. I think, Inspector, that Monsieur Ashford is a man of control, but control can break. The proposal, it was a risk. Her refusal, a blow. We must learn if his pride was stronger than his restraint. He stepped to the conservatory's door, which opened onto the garden path. The ground was soft from recent rain, and Poirot crouched, his eyes scanning the earth. A faint imprint, barely visible, suggested a man's shoe, its tread distinct from the servant's clogs. This path, it leads to the parlour, he murmured. A man could walk here, unseen, unheard, in the dark. Japp followed, squinting at the ground. You're saying he could have gone round the back, maybe found a way in? Poirot's smile was serene. I say only that the possibility exists. The parlour's bolt, it is a puzzle, but not the only one. The veil, the mud, the jasmine, they are pieces of a picture. Monsieur Ashford, he plays the gentleman, but the gentleman's mask can hide a beast. As they returned to the manor, Poirot's mind churned, weaving together the threads. Reginald's proposal, the muddied shoes, the veil's perfume, the pride that burned beneath his polished exterior. The suitor was a man of motive, but motive alone didn't make a murderer. The truth, Poirot knew, lay in the delicate balance of passion and calculation, and he would pursue it with the precision of a maestro, until the final note revealed the killer's name. Chapter 6. The Veil's Secret. The parlour of Haverford Manor, where Eleanor Grayson had met her end, seemed to hold the silence of a tomb, its elegance now marred by the shadow of death. Hercule Poirot stood at its centre, his small, fastidious figure a stark contrast to the room's grandeur. The crystal chandelier above caught the morning light, casting prismatic flecks across the walls, but Poirot's attention was fixed on the chaise longue where the widow's body had been found. The faint imprint of her form lingered in the velvet, a ghostly reminder of the violence that had unfolded. Inspector Japp stood by the door, his arms crossed, his face a map of frustration as he watched Poirot's meticulous inspection. "This room, mon ami," Poirot said, his voice low but resonant. "It is the stage of our tragedy. The locked door, the torn veil. They are not mere props, but players in their own right. We must listen to what they tell us." Japp snorted, though his eyes betrayed curiosity. "You're talking in riddles again, Poirot. We've got the veil, yes, but no fingerprints, no murder weapon beyond it, and a door bolted from the inside. It's like chasing a ghost." Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint smile beneath it. "A ghost, non. A ghost leaves no threads, no perfume. This killer, they leave both." He knelt beside the chaise, his gloved fingers brushing the upholstery where a few crimson threads clung, their silk catching the light like drops of blood. He lifted the torn veil from an evidence bag Japp had placed on a side table, holding it to the window. The fabric, delicate and imported, shimmered with a subtle sheen, its jagged tear a wound in its beauty. "This veil," he murmured, "it is more than a weapon. It is a message." Japp stepped closer, peering at the fabric. "A message? It's just a piece of silk, Poirot. Ashford gave it to her, and someone used it to strangle her. Seems straightforward to me." Poirot's eyes gleamed, his mind already weaving connections. "Straightforward, Inspector? None. Nothing in this affair is so simple. The veil was torn with force, yet left behind. Why not take it? Why not hide it? The killer wished us to see it, to ponder its meaning." He inhaled deeply, catching the faint trace of jasmine that clung to the silk. "This perfume, it is Madame Grayson's, oui? But also, perhaps, a clue to the moment of her death." He turned to the room, his gaze sweeping its details. The heavy oak door with its iron bolt now slid back, and the single window, its latch undisturbed. The fireplace, its embers cold but untouched. A small writing desk stood in one corner, its surface orderly save for a single letter, its seal broken, addressed to a local charity. Poirot lifted it, noting the precise handwriting, the ink still fresh. "Madame Grayson. She was a woman of purpose," he said. "Even in her final hours," she wrote. "But of what?" Japp shrugged, flipping open his notebook. "The maid, Clara, said Mrs. Grayson was alone after tea, except for Ashford's visit. No one else came or went, as far as we know. The butler, Hargreaves, confirmed the house was quiet after 9. Poirot's fingers traced the edge of the desk, pausing at a faint scratch in the varnish, as though something heavy had been dragged across it. "Quiet, oui, but not empty. The parlour. It is a private place, yet accessible to those who know its secrets." He moved to the chaise, examining the crimson threads more closely. "These threads, they are caught here, on the armrest. A struggle. Brief but fierce. The veil was pulled, torn, but not by accident. The killer, they chose it deliberately." Japp frowned, scratching his head. "You keep harping on that veil, Poirot. Why is it so important? It was hers, Ashford's gift. Maybe the killer just grabbed what was handy." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Handy, mon ami? No. The veil is personal, intimate. To use it is to make a statement. Of love, of betrayal, of rage. We must learn its story." He turned to Clara, who had been summoned to the parlour's threshold, her pale face framed by the doorway. "Mademoiselle Finch, you said Madame Grayson loved this veil. When did she last wear it?" Clara's hands twisted her apron, her eyes avoiding the chaise. "Last night, sir. Before dinner. She put it on when Mr. Ashford arrived, said it made her feel elegant. Poirot's gaze sharpened. And after dinner? Did she keep it on? Clara hesitated, her voice faltering. I don't know, sir. I left her after clearing the tea things, around 8. She was still wearing it then. Poirot nodded, his mind cataloguing her words. And this perfume, the jasmine, it was her custom to wear it. Yes, sir, Clara said, her voice barely audible. Always. She had a bottle in her room, used it every evening. Poirot's eyes drifted to the window, its latch secure, but its frame old, the wood slightly warped. He crossed to it, his fingers testing the mechanism. This window, it is locked, oui, but not impregnable. A skilled hand, a thin tool. Entry is possible, though not likely. He turned back to Clara. Mademoiselle, you are certain no one entered the parlour after Monsieur Ashford left? Clara's eyes flickered, a momentary pause that Poirot noted. I didn't see anyone, sir. I was in the servants' hall, then to bed. Japp interjected, his tone sharp. Come now, Clara. You were close enough to hear something. A cry, a thud. Nothing at all. Clara shook her head, her fingers tightening on her apron. Nothing, sir. It was quiet. Poirot's smile was gentle, but probing. Quiet, oui, but the heart, it is not always so. Merci, mademoiselle. You may go. As Clara retreated, her footsteps soft but hurried, Japp turned to Poirot. She's nervous as a cat, Poirot. That pause, she's holding something back. Poirot's moustache twitched. Oui, Inspector. The maid, she sees much but says little. Her loyalty to Madame Grayson is a shield, but also a burden. We must learn what weighs on her. He returned to the chaise, his fingers brushing the crimson threads once more. These threads, they are not merely caught, they are placed as if to draw the eye. The killer, they wish us to focus on the veil, to see its significance. He lifted the torn fabric again, examining the tear closely. The edge, it is not clean, but ragged, as though pulled in anger. Yet the strangulation, it was swift, controlled. A contradiction, no? Japp sighed, rubbing his temples. You're seeing things I don't, Poirot. All I see is a dead woman and a locked room. Poirot's eyes sparkled. You see the surface, mon ami, but the little grey cells, they dive deeper. The veil, it is a bridge between the killer and the victim, between love and hate. We know it was Monsieur Ashford's gift, worn by Madame Grayson last night. But why tear it? To destroy a symbol, or to create one? He moved to the fireplace, its hearth cold but clean, no trace of ash disturbed. The killer, they entered and left without trace, save for this veil. The bolt, it is the puzzle's heart. A door locked from within suggests no escape, yet the killer is not here. There is a secret, Inspector, a mechanism, a trick, or perhaps a key we have not found. Japp's eyes narrowed. You think there's a hidden key? We searched the room, Poirot. Nothing but the veil and those threads. Poirot's smile was serene. Nothing, oui. But the absence of a thing is itself a clue. We must search not only the parlour, but the manor. The veil's secret, it is tied to the killer's method, and the method, it will lead us to their name. As they stepped into the hall, Poirot's mind churned, weaving the fragments, the crimson threads, the jasmine perfume, the bolted door, the torn veil's deliberate placement. The parlour was a locked box, but Poirot knew that every lock had a key, and he would find it, hidden in the shadows of Haverford Manor's silent walls. Chapter 7. The Hidden Key. The upper corridors of Haverford Manor were a labyrinth of polished wood and faded tapestries, their muted colours absorbing the weak November light that filtered through tall, narrow windows. Hercule Poirot moved with his characteristic precision, his polished shoes silent on the thick carpet, his gloved hands clasped behind his back. Inspector Japp followed, his heavier steps betraying a growing impatience, though his eyes remained sharp, scanning the surroundings for any hint of the clue Poirot seemed certain they would find. The air was heavy with the scent of old varnish and the lingering tension of a house in mourning. But Poirot's mind was alight, piecing together the fragments of a puzzle that grew more intricate with each step. "This manor, mon ami," Poirot said, his voice low but resonant. "It is a keeper of secrets, as old houses often are. The parlour, it is locked, the veil is torn. But the truth, it hides elsewhere, in the private places of Madame Grayson's life." Poirot adjusted his hat, his brow furrowed. "You're set on this hidden key idea, aren't you, Poirot? We've searched the parlour top to bottom. No key, no secret passages, nothing but that blasted veil and a few threads. If there's something to find, it's not jumping out at us." Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint smile beneath it. "The truth, Inspector, doesn't jump. It waits, patient, for the little grey cells to uncover it. The locked parlour, it is a deception, a stage set to confuse. We must look beyond it, to the heart of the house, Madame Grayson's own chambers." They ascended a narrow staircase to the second floor, where a heavy oak door marked Eleanor Grayson's private suite. The butler, Hargreaves, a stooped man with a face like weathered parchment, unlocked it with a key from his chain, his hands steady, but his eyes wary. "Mrs. Grayson's room, sir," he said, stepping aside. "She kept it private, even from the staff. Only Clara was allowed in to clean." Poirot nodded, his gaze sweeping the room as he entered. The chamber was a study in understated elegance, a four-poster bed draped in sapphire silk, a rosewood vanity adorned with a silver mirror, a small writing desk beneath a window overlooking the frost-kissed gardens. The air carried a faint trace of jasmine, the same perfume that clung to the crimson veil, and Poirot's senses sharpened at the connection. "This room," he murmured. It was her sanctuary. Here, she was not the widow, not the benefactress, but Eleanor, the woman. Japp, less patient, began poking through a wardrobe, its doors creaking as he opened them. "If there's a key, it's got to be here somewhere. But why hide it? And how'd the killer get it?" Poirot's eyes gleamed as he approached the vanity, its surface orderly but personal. A crystal perfume bottle, a tortoise-shell comb, a small jewelry box inlaid with mother-of-pearl. He lifted the perfume bottle, inhaling deeply. "Jasmine, oui. The scent of the veil, of Madame Grayson herself. A detail that binds the crime to her person." He set it down, his fingers brushing the jewelry box. Its lid was locked, but the mechanism was delicate, easily opened with a hairpin he produced from his pocket with a flourish. Japp raised an eyebrow. "You carry hairpins now, Poirot?" Poirot's smile was serene. "A detective, mon ami, must be prepared for all locks, literal and figurative." He opened the box, revealing a collection of modest but elegant pieces, pearl earrings, a gold locket, a sapphire brooch. But beneath a velvet lining, his fingers found a false bottom, its edges cleverly concealed. With a gentle press, it sprang open, revealing a small brass key, its surface polished but slightly worn, as though frequently handled. Japp's eyes widened. "Good Lord, Poirot! A key! But to what?" Poirot held it to the light, his expression thoughtful. "This, Inspector, is no ordinary key. Its size, its shape, it is meant for a specific lock, one not easily seen." He turned to Hargreaves, who lingered in the doorway. "Monsieur Hargreaves, you know the manor well. Is there a lock in the parlour, perhaps not the main door, that this key might fit?" The butler's brow furrowed, his voice hesitant. "There's only the main bolt, sir, and the window latch. No other locks I know of. Mrs. Grayson was particular about her parlour, kept it locked when she wasn't there." Poirot's moustache twitched. "Particular, oui. And yet a key hidden in her private chamber suggests a secret entrance, a private means of access. We must test this key." They descended to the parlour, the scene of the crime now bathed in the cold light of late morning. The chaise longue, with its faint imprint and scattered crimson threads, seemed to mock their efforts, but Poirot's focus was on the door. He inserted the key into the lock below the bolt, but it did not turn. "No," he murmured, "not the main door." He moved to the window, testing the latch, but the key was too large for its delicate mechanism. Japp's frustration grew. "If it doesn't fit the door or the window, what's it for? A cupboard? A safe?" Poirot's eyes scanned the room, his mind racing. He approached the fireplace, its hearth still cold, and knelt to examine the surround. His fingers traced the carved wood, pausing at a panel that seemed slightly misaligned. With a gentle push, it clicked, revealing a small compartment, its lock matching the brass key perfectly. He inserted it, and with a soft turn, the compartment opened, empty save for a faint dusting of ash. Japp leaned over his shoulder. "What in blazes? A secret compartment, but nothing in it?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Nothing, oui, but its existence is everything. This compartment, it is a clue to the killer's method. The parlour, it was not as locked as it seemed. This key, it allowed entry or exit without disturbing the bolt." Japp's eyes narrowed. "You're saying the killer used this key to get in, strangle her, then lock the door and slip out through some secret way?" Poirot rose, dusting his gloves. "I say, mon ami, that the locked parlour is a lie. The bolt, it was set to deceive, to make us believe no one could leave. But this key, it suggests another path, a hidden door, a concealed passage, or perhaps a simpler trick. We must search the manor's plans, its history. Old houses, they hold their secrets tightly." He turned to Hargreaves, who stood rigid, his face pale. "Monsieur, you have served here many years. Are there passages, doors, known only to a few?" Hargreaves shook his head, but his eyes flickered. "None I know of, sir. The manor's old, but Mrs. Grayson never spoke of such things." Poirot's gaze held the butler's, searching for truth. "And yet you hesitate. The little grey cells, they notice. If you know something, monsieur, it is best to speak now." Hargreaves swallowed, his voice low. "There's nothing, sir. Only, Mrs. Grayson was private. She kept things to herself, even from me." Poirot nodded, but his mind catalogued the butler's unease. "Merci, Monsieur Hargreaves. You may go." As the butler retreated, Japp turned to Poirot, his voice urgent. "That compartment, Poirot? It's a game-changer. But who knew about it? Ashford? Simon? Clara?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. Who, indeed? The key, it was hidden in her room, a place only Clara entered regularly. Yet Monsieur Ashford, he was close to her, perhaps trusted with her secrets, and Monsieur Simon, he lived here, knew the manor's corners. The key, it is a bridge to the killer. But we must find where it leads. He stepped to the window, his gaze drifting to the garden path below. where faint footprints lingered in the soft earth. The mud on Monsieur Ashford's shoes, the bruise on Mademoiselle Finch's wrist, the anger in Monsieur Simon's journal. They are threads, woven with this key. The veil, it was the killer's signature. But this key, it is their method. Japp sighed, rubbing his temples. You're building a picture, Poirot, but it's still blurry. We need more. Something solid. Poirot's smile was serene. Solid, oui, but the truth, it is like water. It flows through the cracks. The hidden key. It has unlocked a possibility. Now we must follow its path, through the manor, through the hearts of those who remain. As they left the parlour, Poirot's mind churned, the key a tangible weight in his pocket, the crimson veil, the locked door, the jasmine perfume. They were pieces of a mosaic, and the key was the cornerstone. He would follow its trail, through the shadows of Haverford Manor, until the killer's secret was laid bare. Chapter 8. The Alibis Crack. The drawing room of Haverford Manor, with its heavy velvet drapes and flickering firelight, seemed to close in around its occupants, as though the very walls conspired to trap their secrets. Hercule Poirot stood at the room's centre, his small, fastidious figure commanding despite his unassuming stature. His grey eyes, sharp as a falcon's, moved from one suspect to another, each seated in a semicircle of unease. Simon Grayson, slouched with a scowl. Clara Finch, her hands knotted in her lap. And Reginald Ashford, his polished demeanour strained by the weight of scrutiny. Inspector Japp leaned against the mantelpiece, his notebook open, his expression a blend of scepticism and anticipation. The air was thick with the scent of wood smoke and tension, and Poirot, with his unerring instinct for the human heart, knew the moment had come to probe deeper. "Mes amis," Poirot began, his voice calm but carrying the authority of a conductor before a symphony. "We stand at a crossroads in this affair. Madame Grayson, she was taken from us in a locked parlour, her life ended by a crimson veil, her own, a gift from Monsieur Ashford, torn in violence. The door, it was bolted, yet a key, hidden in her chamber, suggests a secret way. Now we must test the alibis, the stories you have given, to find the crack through which the truth escapes." Japp cleared his throat, his tone brisk. "Let's start with the timeline. Coroner says Mrs. Grayson died around 10 o'clock last night, strangled. Clara, you found her at 9 this morning. Simon, you claim you were in the library. Clara, the servants' hall. Ashford, you say you left at 9. We need to know exactly where each of you was at 10. Poirot's moustache twitched, his eyes fixed on Simon. "Monsieur Grayson, you are first. The library, it is your refuge, oui? You were there, reading of Roman campaigns, until 11, you say. Yet the parlour, it is not so far. A cry, a struggle. Surely you would hear something." Simon's dark eyes narrowed, his fingers drumming a restless rhythm on the armrest. "I told you, I heard nothing. The library's walls are thick, and I was deep in my books. Besides, I had no reason to go near her parlour. She made it clear I wasn't welcome." Poirot's gaze sharpened, his voice gentle but probing. "No reason, monsieur? Yet your journal, it speaks of anger, of a need to act. I have read it. She'll ruin me. I must act. Words written the night of her death. What action did you plan?" Simon's face flushed, his voice rising. "It's not what you think. I meant getting out from under her thumb, finding a way to make my own money. I wasn't plotting murder." Poirot lifted the journal, its leather cover worn but intact, and opened it to the marked page. These words, They are passionate, desperate. A young man, trapped by circumstance, might act in haste, and the library's French doors, they open to the garden, oui? A path leads to the parlour window. You could have left unseen. Simon's jaw tightened, but he shook his head. I didn't leave. I was there all night. Ask Hargreaves. He saw me when he locked up at 11. Poirot's eyes gleamed, filing away the detail. The butler. He confirms your presence, but only at 11. The hour of 10. It remains unaccounted for. We will return to this. He turned to Clara, her pale face almost translucent in the firelight. Mademoiselle Finch, you were in the servants' hall, polishing silver, until 10, oui? Yet the bruise on your wrist, it tells a story you do not. A grip, strong and recent. Who held you, mademoiselle, and why? Clara's hands trembled, and she tucked them beneath her apron, her eyes fixed on the floor. I told you, sir. It was an accident. I bumped it, carrying a tray. I was in the servants' hall, like I said. Mr. Hargreaves can tell you. Poirot's voice softened, but his gaze was unrelenting. An accident, you say, yet the mark is that of a hand, not a tray. You loved Madame Grayson, oui? You would protect her, even in death. But fear, it binds your tongue. Speak, mademoiselle, and free yourself. Clara's eyes filled with tears, but she shook her head. I don't know anything, sir. I was polishing silver, then went to bed. I swear it. Poirot noted the quiver in her voice, the way her shoulders hunched as though shielding herself. The servants' hall. It is not far from the parlour. A cry, even muffled, might reach you. Yet you heard nothing. Nothing, Clara whispered, her voice breaking. It was quiet, sir, Japp interjected, his tone sharp. Quiet, maybe. But someone was in that parlour, strangling your mistress. You're sure no one passed through the hall? Clara's eyes flickered, a momentary hesitation. No one, sir. Just me and Mr. Hargreaves, in and out. Poirot's moustache twitched, his mind cataloguing her pause. He turned to Reginald, who sat rigid, his hands clasped tightly. Monsieur Ashford, you are the last to see her alive. Dinner at 8, a proposal refused, and you left at 9, you say. Yet the mud on your shoes suggests a walk in the garden, near the parlour window, perhaps. Reginald's jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. I've explained that. I took a brief walk to clear my head, then returned to the village. I was nowhere near the parlour after 9. Poirot's eyes narrowed. And yet, the veil, your gift to her, was used to end her life. A man of pride, rejected, might feel such a blow deeply. The parlour window, it is low, easily reached. You could have returned, used the hidden key we found in her chamber. Reginald's face paled, but he held Poirot's gaze. I knew of no key. I left her alive. I swear it. I loved her. Poirot paced slowly, his hands clasped behind his back. Love, monsieur. It is a motive as strong as hate. The key, it fits a hidden compartment in the parlour, a secret known to few. You were close to Madame Grayson. Perhaps she shared such secrets with you. Reginald shook his head, his voice firm. She shared nothing of the sort. I was a suitor, not a confidant. Poirot stopped, his gaze sweeping the trio. 3 alibis, each with its crack. Monsieur Simon, your journal speaks of action, and the library's doors offer a path to the crime. Mademoiselle Clara, your bruise and your fear suggest a truth you hide. Monsieur Ashford, your muddied shoes and your rejected heart place you near the scene. The little grey cells, they tell me one of you knows more than you say. Japp stepped forward, his voice gruff. Come now, Poirot. You're stirring them up. But we need proof. The coroner's clear. Death at 10, by strangulation. No one heard a thing, and that bolt's still a mystery. Poirot's smile was serene. The bolt, oui. It is the heart of the deception. The key we found, it unlocks a compartment, but perhaps also a method. The killer, they entered, killed, and left, locking the door to create the illusion of impossibility. We must test these alibis further. Speak to Hargreaves. Examine the garden path. Search the manor's hidden places. He turned to the suspects, his voice calm but commanding. You will remain here, mes amis. The truth, it is like a shadow. It moves when you least expect. We will find it. As the suspects dispersed, Simon with a scowl, Clara with a sob, and Reginald with a stiff nod, Japp turned to Poirot. You're closing in, aren't you? That key's got you thinking. Poirot's eyes gleamed. The key, mon ami, it is a door to the truth. The alibis, they crack under scrutiny. Simon's anger, Clara's fear, Ashford's pride, they are threads woven with the veil and the key. We are close, Inspector, but the final piece, it waits in the shadows. As they stepped into the hall, Poirot's mind churned, the cracks in the alibis widening. Simon's unguarded hour, Clara's hidden bruise, Ashford's muddied path. The crimson veil, the jasmine perfume, the hidden key. They were a constellation, and Poirot would follow their light to the killer's heart. Chapter 9. The Suitor's Motive. The dining room of Haverford Manor, with its long mahogany table and towering candelabra, seemed to hold the echoes of countless conversations, now silenced by the shadow of murder. Hercule Poirot stood near the head of the table, his small, meticulous figure a beacon of calm amid the storm of suspicion that swirled through the house. The late afternoon light filtered through heavy damask curtains, casting a muted glow on the polished silver and crystal, but the room's elegance could not dispel the tension that hung like a fog. Inspector Japp, his notebook worn from constant use, stood by a sideboard, his eyes fixed on Reginald Ashford, who sat rigidly in a high-backed chair, his tailored suit as impeccable as ever, but his face betraying a flicker of strain. Poirot's grey eyes, sharp and unrelenting, studied the barrister with the precision of a jeweller examining a flawed gem. "Monsieur Ashford," he began, his voice smooth but edged with intent, "you are a man of reason, a barrister accustomed to the dance of truth and deception in the courtroom. Yet here, in this house, you are a suitor spurned, a man whose heart was offered and refused. Let us speak plainly. This rejection, it was no small thing, non?" Reginald's jaw tightened, his hands clasped tightly on the table, the knuckles whitening. "I've told you, Monsieur Poirot, I proposed to Eleanor last night. She declined, graciously but firmly. I accepted her decision and left at 9. I had no part in her death." Poirot paced slowly, his hands clasped behind his back, his shoes clicking softly on the polished floor. "Accepted, you say? Yet the heart, monsieur, it does not accept so easily. A man of your pride, your ambition, to be refused by a woman of Eleanor Grayson's stature. It is a wound, and the crimson veil, your gift to her, found torn around her neck. This, it speaks of a personal act, an intimate betrayal." Reginald's eyes flashed, a spark of anger breaking through his composure. "You keep circling back to that veil, Poirot. I gave it to her months ago, a token from my travels. I had no control over how it was used. To suggest I'd strangle her with it, it's absurd." Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint smile beneath it. Absurd, perhaps, but the little grey cells, they are not convinced. The veil, it is not merely a weapon, but a symbol. Its tear, its placement around her neck, it suggests a passion, a rage, directed at her rejection of you. Tell me, monsieur, did you argue during your dinner? Reginald's hands unclenched, then clenched again, a subtle tremor betraying his effort to remain calm. We did not argue. We spoke of her work, her plans. I proposed, she refused, and I left. That's all. Poirot stopped pacing, his gaze locking on to Reginald's. And yet, your shoes, they carried mud from the garden path, a path that leads past the parlour window. You walked, you said, to clear your head. But a man, wounded by rejection, might linger, might watch, might act in a moment of despair. Reginald's voice hardened, but his eyes flickered with unease. I told you, I walked the front drive, then returned to the village. I didn't go near the parlour window. You've no proof otherwise. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. He produced the small brass key from his pocket, holding it up to catch the light. This key, monsieur, found hidden in Madame Grayson's chamber, fits a secret compartment in the parlour. A compartment known to few, perhaps to you. Did she ever speak of such a thing? A private entrance? A hidden lock? Reginald's face paled, but he shook his head. I knew of no such compartment. Eleanor was private, guarded. She didn't share secrets with me. Poirot's eyes narrowed, his voice soft but probing. Guarded, oui, but you were close to her. A suitor she entertained. A woman like Madame Grayson, she might trust a man she admired with such a secret. Or perhaps you discovered it, used it to enter the parlour after your departure, to confront her one last time. Reginald stood, his chair scraping against the floor, his voice rising. This is nonsense. I left her alive. I swear it. I loved her, Poirot. I'd never harm her. Japp, who had been silent, stepped forward, his tone gruff. Love's a funny thing, Ashford. Turns to hate quick enough when it's scorned. You were the last with her, and that veil's yours, makes you look good for it. Reginald's hands shook, and he shoved them into his pockets. I'm no murderer. You're grasping at shadows. Poirot's gaze remained steady, his mind cataloguing every nuance, the tremor in Reginald's hands, the defensive edge in his voice, the mud that lingered on his shoes despite his claim of a brief walk. Shadows, monsieur. No, they are threads, and they weave a pattern. The veil, the key, the mud, they point to a man whose pride was wounded, whose heart was denied. But we must be certain. He turned to Japp, his voice low. Inspector, let us examine the garden path once more. The footprints, they may tell us where Monsieur Ashford walked or lingered. They left Reginald, his posture rigid, but his eyes betraying a flicker of fear, and stepped into the garden, where the late afternoon light cast long shadows across the frost-dusted lawn. The path from the conservatory to the parlour window was soft, the recent rain leaving it malleable to impressions. Poirot crouched, his gloved fingers tracing a faint footprint, its tread matching the pattern on Reginald's shoes. Here, mon ami, he said, pointing to the mark. A man stood here, near the parlour window. The print is deep, as though he paused, perhaps to look inside. Japp squinted at the ground, his notebook open. Could be Ashford's, right enough, but it's not enough to pin him. Anyone could have walked here. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Anyone, oui, but the timing, it is precise. Monsieur Ashford admits to walking the grounds at 9, yet this print, it is fresh, undisturbed by later steps. He was here, Inspector, and not merely passing through. They followed the path to the parlour window, its frame low and easily accessible. Poirot tested the latch, finding it secure, but noting a faint scratch on the wood, as though a tool had been used to pry it open. The window, it is locked now, but a skilled hand could open it, enter, and leave no trace, save for this scratch and the key to the hidden compartment. Japp's brow furrowed. You're saying he came back, used the key to get in, and killed her. But the bolt, Poirot, how'd he lock it from the outside? Poirot's smile was serene. The bolt, it is the final piece of the deception. A string, a weight, a simple mechanism could slide it shut after the killer left. We must search the parlour again for such a device. They returned to the dining room, where Reginald still sat, his composure fraying. Poirot's voice was calm but commanding. Monsieur Ashford, you loved Madame Grayson, oui? Yet love, when refused, can turn to vengeance. The veil, your gift, was a symbol of your devotion. Its use, its destruction, it points to you. Reginald's voice was low, almost a whisper. I didn't kill her. I couldn't. Poirot nodded, but his mind was elsewhere, weaving the threads, the muddied footprint, the scratched window, the hidden key, the torn veil. For now, monsieur, you may go. But the truth, it is like a tide. It rises, and it will reveal all. As Reginald left, Japp turned to Poirot, his frustration evident. He's our man, isn't he? The veil, the proposal, the footprints, it's all pointing to him. Poirot's eyes sparkled. Pointing? Oui, but not yet proving. The suitor's motive is clear, but the method, it remains elusive. The key, the veil, the bolt, they are pieces of a mosaic. And we are close, mon ami, to seeing the full picture. As they stepped into the hall, Poirot's thoughts churned, the suitor's pride a burning thread in the tapestry of the crime. Reginald Ashford was a man of motive, but the final proof lay just beyond reach, hidden in the manor's silent corners, waiting for Poirot's little grey cells to uncover it. Chapter 10. The reconstruction, the parlour of Haverford Manor, bathed in the cold grey light of a November dusk, seemed to pulse with the memory of violence, its elegant furnishings now mere witnesses to a grim tableau. Hercule Poirot stood at the room's centre, his small, fastidious figure a beacon of order amid the chaos of murder. The chaise longue, where Eleanor Grayson had breathed her last, bore the faint imprint of her form, and the crimson threads caught on its armrest gleamed like accusations in the fading light. Inspector Japp, his notebook clutched tightly, paced near the bolted door, his face etched with the strain of a case that seemed to twist further with each revelation. The air was heavy with the scent of old wood and the lingering trace of jasmine, a perfume that tied the crime to its victim and her killer. Poirot's grey eyes, sharp and unrelenting, swept the room, his mind a whirl of connections and possibilities. This parlour, mon ami, he said, his voice calm but resonant. It is the heart of our mystery. The locked door, the torn veil, the hidden key, they are pieces of a puzzle. And now we must reconstruct the crime to see how they fit. Japp stopped pacing, his brow furrowed. Reconstruct? You mean act it out? Poirot, we've got a bolted door, a dead woman, and no clear way in or out. You're sure about this hidden key business? Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint smile beneath it. Certain, Inspector. The key, found in Madame Grayson's chamber, unlocks a secret compartment in this very room. But it is more. It is the means by which the killer entered, killed, and left, creating the illusion of an impossible crime. Let us begin. He moved to the chaise, gesturing for Japp to join him. Imagine, if you will, Madame Grayson, seated here at 10 o'clock last night. She is alone, the veil around her shoulders, its jasmine scent mingling with her own. The killer enters, how we shall see, and approaches. There is a struggle, brief but fierce. The veil is torn, used to strangle her, and left around her neck. The killer then bolts the door, locks it with the hidden key, and departs, leaving us a locked room. Japp rubbed his temples, his voice gruff. Sounds neat, Poirot, but that bolts the problem. You can't slide it shut from the outside without some trick. And we've found no strings, no pulleys, nothing. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Patience, mon ami. The trick, it is simple, but clever. Let us test the scene. He crossed to the door, examining the heavy iron bolt, its mechanism smooth but sturdy. The bolt, it slides easily. A string, a weight, could move it, but we have found none. Yet the key, it suggests another method. He produced the small brass key, its polished surface catching the light. This key, it fits the hidden compartment by the fireplace, but it may also fit another lock, a secondary door, a panel, perhaps concealed. He moved to the fireplace, where the secret compartment lay, its panels seamlessly blended with the woodwork. He opened it again, revealing the empty space within, and ran his fingers along the surrounding panels, searching for another irregularity. Japp watched, his skepticism fading into curiosity. You think there's another way out? A secret passage? Poirot's fingers paused at a faint seam in the paneling, barely visible to the untrained eye. He pressed gently, and a soft click echoed in the stillness. A narrow section of the wall swung inward, revealing a dark, cramped passage, its air musty and cool. Japp's jaw dropped. Good Lord, Poirot, a hidden door. How do you know? Poirot's smile was serene. The little grey cells, mon ami, they observe. The manor, it is old, and old houses have their secrets. The key, it was not only for the compartment, but for this passage. A private way in and out of the parlour. Japp peered into the passage, his torch illuminating a narrow corridor that curved toward the manor's exterior. Where's it led? Poirot stepped inside, his movements careful but deliberate. Let us find out. The passage, barely wide enough for a man, wound through the manor's walls, its stone damp and cold. After a few twists, it ended at a small door, its lock matching the brass key. Poirot inserted it, and the door opened to the garden, near the path where Reginald's footprint had been found. The night air rushed in, carrying the scent of wet earth. Japp whistled softly. So the killer came through here, killed her, and left, locking the door behind them. But the bolt, Poirot, how'd they manage that? Poirot's eyes sparkled as he re-entered the parlour, closing the hidden door behind him. The bolt, it is the final touch of genius. Observe. He returned to the chaise, his mind reconstructing the scene. The killer enters through the passage, using the key. Madame Grayson, she is here, unsuspecting. The struggle is swift. The veil is torn, used to strangle her. The killer then slides the bolt, locks the main door with the key, and exits through the passage, locking it behind them. The bolt, it remains, creating the illusion of a sealed room. Japp frowned, scratching his head. But why the veil? Why tear it and leave it? Seems risky. Poirot's gaze drifted to the chaise, where the crimson threads still clung. The veil, Inspector, it is personal. It was chosen to wound, to mark the crime with meaning. Monsieur Ashford gave it to her, a symbol of his love. Its destruction, it suggests a rejection turned to rage. Japp's eyes narrowed. You're back to Ashford, then. His footprint, his veil, his proposal. It's all pointing to him. Poirot nodded, but his expression was cautious. Pointing, but we must be certain. The passage, it was a secret, but who knew of it? Madame Grayson, certainly. Clara, who cleaned her room, perhaps. Ashford, if she trusted him. Simon, who grew up in this house, might have explored its corners. We must question them again, and search their rooms for traces of this passage, dust, perhaps, or stone grit. They returned to the drawing-room, where the suspects waited, their faces a gallery of unease. Poirot's voice was calm, but commanding as he addressed them. Mes amis, a discovery has been made. A hidden passage leading from the parlour to the garden, locked by a key we found in Madame Grayson's chamber. One of you used this passage to enter, to kill, and to leave, creating the locked room. Who among you knew of this secret? Simon's scowl deepened, but he remained silent. Clara's eyes widened, her hands trembling. Reginald's face was a mask, but his fingers twitched. I knew of no passage, he said, his voice steady but strained. Eleanor never mentioned such a thing. Clara's voice was barely audible. I didn't know, sir. I cleaned her room, but I never saw a key or a passage. Simon shrugged, his tone bitter. This house is old. Could be a dozen passages for all I know. I didn't use one. Poirot's eyes gleamed, his mind cataloguing their reactions. The passage, it is the key to the method. The veil, it is the key to the heart. One of you knew both, and used them to end Madame Grayson's life. Japp stepped forward, his voice gruff. We'll search your rooms, all of you. If there's dust or grit from that passage, we'll find it. As the suspects dispersed, their footsteps heavy with dread, Japp turned to Poirot. You've cracked the locked room, Poirot, but we're still short of pinning the killer. Ashford's looking likely, but Simon's got motive, and Clara's hiding something. Poirot's smile was serene. The reconstruction, mon ami. It has shown us the how. The who, it is close. The veil, the key, the passage. They are threads, and they lead to a single heart, burning with motive. We are near, Inspector. Very near. As they stepped into the hall, Poirot's thoughts churned. The hidden passage, a revelation that illuminated the crime's mechanics. The crimson veil, the jasmine perfume, the brass key. They were the constellation guiding him to the truth, and he would follow it through the manor's shadows until the killer stood revealed. Chapter 11. The Confession. The grand hall of Haverford Manor, with its soaring ceiling and ancestral portraits, seemed to loom over the gathered suspects, its shadows deepening as the November evening closed in. Hercule Poirot stood before the great fireplace, its embers casting a flickering glow across his impeccable suit and waxed moustache. His small, fastidious figure commanded the room, his grey eyes sharp and unrelenting as they moved from Simon Grayson's sullen scowl to Clara Finch's trembling hands to Reginald Ashford's rigid composure. Inspector Japp stood by his side, his notebook tucked away, his face set with the grim anticipation of a man sensing the end of a hunt. The air was thick with the scent of burning logs and the weight of impending truth, and Poirot, with his unerring instinct for the human heart, knew the moment had come to unravel the knot of deception. Mes amis, Poirot began, his voice calm but resonant, carrying the authority of a maestro before the final note. We have journeyed through the shadows of this crime, piecing together the threads of a murder most calculated. Madame Eleanor Grayson, strangled in her locked parlour, the crimson veil, her cherished gift, torn and used as a weapon, the hidden key, the secret passage. They are not mere clues, but a narrative, written by a hand driven by passion and cunning. Tonight, we will name that hand. Simon shifted, his dark eyes flashing with defiance. Get on with it, Poirot. I've had enough of your theatrics. Clara's hands twisted her apron, her voice a whisper. Please, sir, just tell us. Reginald's jaw tightened, but he remained silent, his eyes fixed on Poirot with a mix of wariness and resolve. Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint smile beneath it. Theatrics, Monsieur Grayson. No, this is order, the restoration of truth. Let us begin with the scene. Madame Grayson, alone in her parlour at 10 o'clock, the veil about her shoulders, its jasmine scent lingering. The killer enters, not through the bolted door, but through a secret passage, unlocked by the brass key hidden in her chamber. A struggle, brief but fierce. The veil is torn, used to strangle her. The killer bolts the door, locks it, and exits through the passage, leaving an impossible crime. Japp nodded, his voice low. The passage explains the locked room, Poirot, but who used it? We've got no proof tying any of them to it. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Proof, mon ami, is in the heart, not merely the hands. Let us consider each of you. He turned to Seaman, his gaze piercing. Monsieur Grayson, your anger at Madame Grayson was no secret. Your journal speaks of ruin, of action. The library, it is close to the parlour, its French doors leading to the garden path. You could have slipped out, used the passage, and returned, your alibi untested for the crucial hour. Simon's face flushed, his voice sharp. I was in the library reading. Hargreaves saw me at 11. I didn't know about any passage. Poirot's smile was serene. Perhaps, monsieur, but anger is a powerful guide. Yet your journal, it speaks of financial ruin, not murder. The little grey cells, they wonder if your rage was enough to kill. He turned to Clara, her pale face almost translucent in the firelight. Mademoiselle Finch, your loyalty to Madame Grayson is profound, yet your fear betrays you. The bruise on your wrist, shaped like a man's grip, suggests coercion. You were in the servants' hall, yes, but close enough to hear a cry, yet you claim silence. Did someone warn you to stay quiet? Clara's eyes filled with tears, her voice breaking. I didn't hear anything, sir, I swear it. The bruise, it's nothing, just an accident. Poirot's gaze softened, but his voice was firm. An accident? No. The truth, mademoiselle. It will free you. Someone held you, frightened you. Who? Clara's hands trembled, and she looked away, her silence a heavy weight. Poirot turned to Reginald, his eyes narrowing. Monsieur Ashford, you are the suitor, the man who loved Madame Grayson, who gave her the crimson veil. You dined with her, proposed, and were refused. Your shoes, they carried mud from the garden path, near the parlour window. The key, the passage, did she share their secret with you, a man she trusted until she broke your heart? Reginald's composure cracked, his voice low but fierce. I've told you, I left at 9. I walked the drive, not the garden. I knew nothing of a passage or a key. I loved her, Poirot. I couldn't harm her. Poirot paced slowly, his hands clasped behind his back. Love, monsieur. It is a fire that can burn as easily as it warms. The veil, your gift, was chosen to kill her, its tear a symbol of rejection. The footprint by the parlour window, it matches your tread. The passage, it leads to the garden where you walked. And the bruise on Mademoiselle Finch's wrist. Did you grip her? Warn her to stay silent? Reginald's face crumpled, his hands shaking. No, I didn't. He stopped, his voice dropping to a whisper. She laughed at me, said I was a fool, a dreamer beneath her. I couldn't bear it. Clara sobbed, her voice breaking through the silence. He grabbed me, sir. After he left the parlour, he was in the hall, angry. He took my arm, told me to say nothing, to stay out of it. That's how I got the bruise. Reginald's head snapped up, his eyes wide. I didn't mean to hurt her. I was upset, yes. But I didn't kill Eleanor. Poirot's eyes gleamed, his voice steady. Monsieur Ashford, you loved her, but she scorned you. You knew of the passage, perhaps from a careless word she spoke. You used the key, entered the parlour, and in a moment of rage you took her life with the veil you gave her, tearing it to mark your pain. You bolted the door, locked it, and left through the passage, believing your crime perfect. Reginald collapsed into his chair, his face ashen. I couldn't stand it. She mocked me, said I'd never be enough. I went back, through the passage. She'd shown it to me once, in jest. I only meant to talk, to make her see. But she laughed again. And I lost control. The veil was there, and I. His voice broke, a sob escaping. I didn't mean to kill her. Japp stepped forward, his voice gruff as he produced handcuffs. Reginald Ashford, you're under arrest for the murder of Eleanor Grayson. Clara wept, her hands covering her face, while Simon stared, his scowl replaced by shock. Poirot's expression remained calm, but his eyes held a trace of sorrow. The heart, Monsieur Ashford, it betrays us all. Your pride, your love, they became your undoing. As Japp led Reginald away, his footsteps heavy in the silent hall, Poirot turned to the fire, its embers glowing like the last vestiges of truth. The confession, mon ami, it is the final thread. The veil, the key, the passage, they led us to him. But it was his heart that spoke the loudest. Japp nodded, his face grim. You did it, Poirot. Cracked the locked room and all. But Clara's bruise, that was the clincher. Poirot's moustache twitched. Oui, Inspector. The bruise, it was the crack in his mask. Mademoiselle Finch, she held the truth, even in her fear. The little grey cells, they see what the heart tries to hide. As the manor settled into an uneasy quiet, Poirot's thoughts lingered on the crimson veil, its torn silk a silent witness to a crime of passion. The puzzle was solved, but the cost, he knew, was a truth as heavy as the shadows that cloaked Haverford Manor. Chapter 12. The Order Restored. The grand hall of Haverford Manor stood silent, its towering portraits gazing down with the weight of centuries, as though bearing witness to the resolution of a tragedy that had shaken the house to its foundations. Hercule Poirot stood by the great window, his small, fastidious figure framed against the twilight, the last rays of the November sun casting long shadows across the polished floor. The crimson veil, now an evidence bag in Inspector Japp's possession, lay folded on a nearby table, its torn silk a mute testament to the crime it had both symbolized and solved. The air was cool, tinged with the scent of wax and the fading embers of the fire, and Poirot's grey eyes, though calm, held a trace of melancholy, as if the restoration of order came at the cost of human frailty laid bare. Japp, his notebook finally tucked away, stood beside Poirot, his face a mix of relief and exhaustion. "You've done it again, Poirot," he said, his voice gruff but warm. "Cracked the locked room, pinned the killer, and all with that veil and a hidden key. I'll never know how you see these things." Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint smile beneath it. "The little grey cells, mon ami. They observe, they connect. The veil, the key, the passage. They were but threads in a tapestry, woven by passion and pride. Monsieur Ashford, he could not bear the wound to his heart, and so he took a life, leaving us a puzzle to solve." Japp shook his head, a wry smile tugging at his lips. "Pride, love, rage. It's always the same with you, isn't it? You see right through to the heart of it. But that passage? How do you know it was there?" Poirot turned from the window, his hands clasped behind his back. "The manor? It is old, Inspector, and old houses whisper their secrets to those who listen. The key, hidden in Madame Grayson's chamber, it was too deliberate, too specific. It spoke of a lock beyond the main door, a secret known to few. The compartment by the fireplace, it led me to the passage, a path for a killer who wished to deceive." Japp nodded, his eyes drifting to the evidence bag. "And the veil, Ashford's gift, used against her. That's what clinched it, wasn't it? His confession, Clara's bruise, it all fell into place." Poirot's gaze softened, his voice low. "Oui, the veil was the heart of the crime. A gift of love, turned to a weapon of vengeance. Monsieur Ashford, he could not bear her laughter, her rejection. The tear in the silk, it was his rage made manifest. And Mademoiselle Finch, her bruise, it was the crack in his facade, the proof that he sought to silence her fear." Simon Grayson emerged from the shadows of the hall, his lean frame less defiant now, his dark eyes subdued. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, his voice rough but earnest, "you saved me. I thought they'd pin it on me. My journal, my anger. I owe you." Poirot shook his head, his expression gentle but firm. "Non, Monsieur Grayson, I did not save you. I uncovered the truth. And the truth, it saves or condemns. Your anger, it was real, but it was not murderous. You must learn to master it, lest it lead you to ruin." Simon nodded, his jaw tight, and retreated, his footsteps fading into the manor's stillness. Clara Finch lingered at the edge of the hall, her pale face streaked with tears, her apron crumpled in her hands. "Sir," she whispered, "I'm sorry I didn't speak sooner. I was so afraid. He grabbed me, threatened me. I thought no one would believe me." Poirot's eyes were kind, his voice soft. "Mademoiselle, fear is a heavy chain, but you broke it. Your courage, it helped us find the truth. Madame Grayson, she would be proud of you." Clara's tears fell anew, but she managed a small nod before slipping away, her figure swallowed by the corridor's gloom. Japp turned to Poirot, his voice low. "It's a grim business, Poirot. Ashford seemed the gentleman, but under it all, he was just a man scorned. Makes you wonder about people." Poirot's gaze returned to the window, where the twilight deepened, the manor's grounds fading into shadow. "The heart, mon ami, it is both fragile and fierce. Monsieur Ashford loved, but his love turned to poison when refused. The crimson veil, it was his declaration, his confession, long before he spoke the words." He lifted the evidence bag, the veil's torn silk catching the last light. This veil, it was her joy, his gift, and his weapon. It tells the story of a crime born of passion, sealed by deception. The passage, the key, the bolt, they were the mechanics, but the veil, It was the soul. Japp sighed, adjusting his hat. You make it sound almost poetic, Poirot. But it's done now. Ashford's in custody, and the manor can rest. Poirot's smile was tinged with sorrow. Rest, oui, but not forget. Haverford Manor. It will carry this wound, as all places do when blood is shed. But order, it is restored, and that is our task. As they stepped into the chill evening, the manor looming behind them, Poirot paused on the gravel drive, his eyes tracing the silhouette of the house against the darkening sky. The crimson veil, now a silent witness to justice, had led him through the maze of motive and method, and though the truth was uncovered, its weight lingered. The little grey cells, he murmured, they find the path, but the heart, it feels the cost. With a final glance at the manor, its windows glowing faintly like eyes in the dusk, Poirot turned and walked into the night, his work complete, the order of Haverford Manor restored, if only for a moment, against the chaos of human passion.